Welcome back to another GTN Coaches Corner where we answer all your questions about triathlon training. On this week's show, trying to knock 2 hours off my 70.3 time.
Yeah, balancing work, life and a new family with triathlon.
Doing a dynamic warm-up for cycling.
And why there are groups within a non-drafting triathlon.
And why you don't see so many triathletes running in barefoot running shoes.
Oh, good questions. Well, do keep your questions coming in using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner, but straight into the first one from Zach Collins 987. I'm currently doing 5 to 7 hours of training per week, 1 swim, 3 to 4 runs and 4 rides a week. I'm currently training for 70.3 Tasmania in February 24. I raced this event this year and finished just under 6 hours 30 minutes. I want to qualify for New Zealand Worlds in 24. How much training should I be doing per week over the next 6 months to get down to a sub 4 hour 30 finish?
Hey.
So taking 2 hours off.
2 hours off is ambitious goals. Like, we like it and we don't want to dissuade
No.
you. Yeah, we like ambitious goals. No, nothing wrong with that. However, knocking 2 hours off your 70.3 time from 6 hours 30 down to under 4.5 is optimistic. Let's just put it that way. I mean, your question also implies that it's merely an equation of how much training time in to get the lowest possible training race time out. And it's not that simple. There's a lot more to it than that. Essentially, to go from a 6 hour 30 to a 4 hour 30, you're going to have to improve your strength, your endurance, your probably your form, basically everything. And doing all of those things at once in one season in 6 months is almost impossible. It's very difficult to do that at the same time, to do focus on all of those things at the same time. So you've really given yourself a lot to do. And I think what you're going to find is that those first gains from about 6 hours 30 effort pace down to about 5 hours 30 time for a 70.3 come fairly quickly as you start ramping up the miles and as you start doing the work. That next leap from 5 hours 30 down to 5 hours and then from 5 hours down to 4 hours 30 gets harder and harder and harder, and the law of diminishing returns really kicks in, and you're going to find that it gets really, really difficult. I think probably the answer here is to set yourself a bit more realistic goal. Aim to knock an hour off this season, another half an hour off the following season, and then the following season try lock that last half an hour off. To do a 2 hour improvement in your PB in 6 months is very optimistic, and what you're going to find yourself doing is really rushing and potentially hurting yourself, getting injured.
Yeah, I was going to say that the risk or the worry is that you fall into the trap of trying to rush things here and not doing things properly, and particularly injuries being an issue there. But it's not to say it's not possible, but I think just give yourself a little bit longer. You're still going to get down to very competitive time, sub maybe 5 hours 30 within a year, but yeah, probably.
I think you're on track with what you're doing too. He says 3 to 4 runs and 4 cycles.
Yep.
1 swim is probably not going to cut it. You're going to have to increase that to 2 or 3 swims a week. But you are on track with the numbers, and you do have to gradually increase your mileage. But be realistic with the goals you set so that you don't get too despondent if you don't hit them.
Yeah. All right. Next one. I think this one's probably more aimed at yourself, James. It's from Nick Van Dam, 1214. I returned to the hobby of triathlon last year for the first time since becoming a dad. I have a personal goal of working back to doing an iron distance race. Last year I completed a half, which was great. The challenge continues to be finding a balance with family, life, work and training. Are there any strategies you could recommend, or should I find contentment with the 70.3 distance? Thanks.
No, you should do what I do. Just retire, call Ironman, quit. No, in reality, the simple fact is having a young family is really challenging. It's a challenging period of your life. And Ironman is also really challenging, and there very much might be the case that doing both of those things at the same period of your life is not necessarily the best option for you. However, that's not to say you can't do it. If you have the support of a partner and you have the time, then absolutely go for it. They're both very important things, and doing an Ironman is a great goal to do, and you can do it. It's going to take a little bit more organization, a little bit more dedication than it maybe would take someone who doesn't have a young family, but you can do it. And this is where I'm going to give you our standard advice. Get a coach.
Yeah, definitely get a coach. You touched on something there around getting sort of buy-in from your partner. That is the main thing I hear from people that manage to do this successfully is that they've spoken to their partner and they've sort of got buy-in. It's sort of a project that they're working on. They've got something that the family have agreed on. And yes, it's a 12-month or whatever thing that he's working on, she's working on. And but the coach aspect, whilst it may seem quite daunting with family life, always seems like it's changing, children up at different times of day, but having that coach setting you a program so you wake up knowing it's all set for you, and accountability with that is massive, because otherwise you wake up and you just move things around, make it up as you go, and that's where training just goes to pot.
Yeah, I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that a coach is for someone who's already at the limits of their performance and now are just looking for that extra 5 or 10%. But that's not necessarily the case. A coach can really help you just fit it around your lifestyle so it doesn't become an added stress. So they can remove that stress of managing your training because they do the managing for you. So a coach is really beneficial, not just for the people who are going for Kona slots and things like that. Okay, next question is from the West Deperana. Something like that. Hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Is it important to do dynamic stretching warm-up before cycling and swimming, just like it is before running? I notice many cyclists and swimmers tend to just get on the bike or in the water without anything to precede it, but runners tend to do a lot of dynamic movement drills before running. Okay, well, interesting observation. I'm not sure I'd agree with that. Runners tend to just go and run when they really should be doing dynamic warm-ups before, and swimmers do tend to do dynamic arm swing-ins and elastic bands and that kind of thing. Especially,
I think I know why though. So what happens is you just head out of the door for running and you're just like, let's just get on with it. I've got 30 minutes, let's go. Swimming, you procrastinate, you don't want to get wet.
It's true.
And you stand on the side of the pool, I'll just do a few more arm swings for 5 minutes.
On the pool
That's the only reason why I used to do them.
True. Okay, let's just dig into this a little bit. For running, you really should do a dynamic stretch, dynamic warming up, because running has impact, and the way you mitigate that impact is by your muscles actually absorbing that impact. And if they're not ready to do that, those first few steps can feel really pounding and jarring, and it's not comfortable at all. You'll be far more efficient and more effective a runner if you've done a dynamic warm-up so that your muscles are activated. Swimming, similarly, you'll be more efficient and effective in the water if you've warmed up those muscles and you've got a good stroke from that first stroke, and you don't spend the first few lengths actually just trying to get your arms moving and get that stiffness up.
With the swimming, I mean, what a lot of people do fall into the trap of doing is jumping in and just instantly swimming at almost race pace, and that is not a good idea. But actually, if you are trying to improve your swimming, actually doing some swim bands or something like that on the pool side and getting muscles activated, because people forget swimming is a full body workout. Everything should work in conjunction with one another, and if you don't get those things activating, working together, it just all kind of goes all over the place when you're swimming. So if you can get that kind of working on land, particularly around the shoulders, trying to strengthen and activate some of those smaller control muscles around the shoulders, that can prevent some big injuries as well, swimmer's shoulder and things. So
thanks for Mark. He's gone off on a tangent. That wasn't the question. The question was, do you need to do it for cycling? And the answer is actually not really. Because cycling, you're pedaling in circles and your feet are clipped into the pedals, it's going to be pretty standard. And also for cycling, you can start really, really low power and you can really warm up slowly. Running, you're going to immediately get that impact. Swimming, you're going to immediately be swimming with a bad form if you haven't done a dynamic. Cycling, you can just go out and ride at 80, 100 watts for a little while and really get your body to warm up slowly. You can shift it into your granny gear, start slowly and slowly build up as you go. So dynamic stretching is not as important for cycling. However, you should probably activate your core, you should probably activate those hip flexors and make sure that you are efficient as possible, because you do need that stable base to pedal from, and it is important, if you can find the time, to do some dynamic stretching, some dynamic warm-up before you start cycling. I know you're not going to do it, but that is why you should.
It's just good across the board, really, isn't it? It's good. Yeah. Right, next one from Larry Lem, 3582. Since non-drafting triathlons are big time trials and just about no one rides at the same pace as others, watching the pros, why do big groups form on the bike? It seems that a slow rider might be pushing beyond their limit, trying to keep up, and a fast rider might be riding slower than they could, therefore wasting time, thinking they're saving their legs for the run. It's a good observation.
It is.
And I mean, essentially, what you're probably missing out on the fact is that you still get a draft at sort of 12, 15 meters, even potentially slightly at 20 meters as well. Yeah. And those small savings, even if we're talking 1 to 2% over the course of 90k, 180k, that is significant if you're managing to make those savings even for short periods during the bike leg.
Yeah, non-drafting triathlons are not completely non-drafting, especially depending on which direction the wind is coming from. Secondly, non-drafting triathlons or any triathlons are a lot of mental effort, and maintaining your pace solo with no yardstick or anything is quite difficult. Whereas sitting 15 or 20 meters behind someone and just literally watching their bum and making sure it doesn't go away from you and also doesn't get closer to you is a lot less difficult mentally. So it takes a lot of the strain off. You can just zone out and just stay there. And that is why you see pros kind of conglomerating into this group that goes down the highway, because all of them are getting some benefit marginally from the draft, but also from just the mental aspect of knowing where their competitors are, knowing that they're in the mix, knowing that they're not falling off the back because they lost concentration, they're not losing time to their competitor because they lost concentration. So there are a lot of dynamics and tactics and different strategies at play in long distance triathlon. It is not a just individual time trial like it might seem looking from the outside. It is a very strategic thing, and I think maybe this is something that the general coverage of triathlon has failed to kind of bring the viewer in and show them exactly what's happening out there on the highway when these bikes are going at 40 k's an hour for 4 or 5 hours. There is a lot of dynamics happening out there, and we miss it a lot.
Well, I know they have tried, and I think they did it one of the years you were racing at Cone, is actually trying to do a live feed of the athlete's power. And that would be really interesting, because what we call it essentially a pace line. The athletes are all in a line, they're benefiting from a little bit of draft, but they're not necessarily in that draft zone. We call that a bit of a pace line. And those athletes on the front are obviously going to be pushing more than the athletes at the back. But what would be interesting is watching those powers increase as the athletes come around, they move around in these groups, because that is typically what is meant to happen. Not all the athletes pull their turn, but the athletes try and share the workload and try and stay away from other athletes or catch other athletes up the road. So they're loosely drafting and benefiting from draft to try and
hopefully some technological advancements will bring you into the race, some live telemetry from those bikes, and you'll be able to see what's going on. There is a lot going on in those races. It is not just put your head down and pedal for 4.5 hours and then get off and run. So hopefully we'll be able to show you inside that at some point in triathlon coverage.
We've got one last question from Fungus 6 Million. Interesting name. They've opened a can of worms here. We've got Barefoot running, James. Right, thoughts on barefoot style shoes for running, both for training and racing. I see many people in the fitness and hiking community wearing them and swearing by them, but I never really see pro triathletes using them. I have used the same model of Salomon trail shoes for the past few years, wondering if I should make the switch. Are barefoot shoes something I should really care about if I have foot/ankle issues that cannot be otherwise fixed?
Yeah, there's a bit of a hornet's nest in the world of endurance thing, because there's a barefoot running community that is, let's say, evangelical about barefoot running, and not for nothing. They do help strengthen your lower leg. They do have a lot of benefits for injury prevention and strengthening your lower leg and that kind of thing. Basically, the argument is that we were evolved to run around barefoot, and therefore we should be. And modern day shoes have really affected our gait and our running and everything like that, and therefore you should go back to more natural running styles. However, we also run on really hard surfaces. Triathlons happen on paved surfaces, and that's going to hurt.
Yeah, so there is obviously, as James says, some merit for the barefoot style of running. We have developed over the years. Our muscles in our feet have kind of switched off. Our ankles are not as strong as they maybe once were through evolution. But the barefoot shoes will hopefully try and strengthen those feet, the muscles in them. But if we suddenly jump straight into that, that's where injuries can start to creep in. And we have seen a lot of that, where people suddenly started going on this barefoot running craze and did everything barefoot. And we saw a lot of injuries. And that was sort of like 10 years ago. There's a bit of a craze here, wasn't there? So actually, where you could benefit with wearing barefoot shoes or doing things barefoot is just with maybe the odd run warm-up. We used to do it around the infield of an athletics track on the warm-up or warm-down. Just a great opportunity. It's only 5-10 minutes. Gets things activated, then whack shoes on and carry on running. So not to sway you totally away from barefoot shoes, but be careful with it and don't.
And the reason you won't see any pros wearing barefoot shoes is these days, with these super shoes with very fancy foams and carbon soles and everything, you just will not be competitive in the front end of races. You will not see Eliud Kipchoge switch into barefoot anytime soon. The new shoes and the technology in them is significantly faster than running barefoot, no matter how well adapted you are. And one of the big things, as Mark says, is just the time to adapt. And we're not talking 6 weeks. No. We're talking 6 years to adapt your body to be able to run a marathon barefoot. And it's just not something that many people are willing to invest. They want to run a marathon in 12 weeks' time, not in 6 years' time, barefoot. So yeah, I would say wear your barefoot shoes around the house, wear them around the garden, wear them in your activities of daily life, but save the running shoes for running.
We've actually got a couple of videos on GTN around barefoot running, comparing the two, shod versus non-shod and all that sort of stuff. So do check them out. But I think that's enough for this week. We've had very good questions. Thanks for sending them in. Please do keep them coming using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner, and see you next time.